behalf of Magucho, I'd like to welcome you to yet another interesting conversation. It is our goal at Magucho to bring you experiences that you seek, experiences that exist but you may not know where to find, and also to curate interesting experiences for you. I think seeing the stars is one of the most magical experiences. And in that endeavor, I'd like to introduce you to our partners, Starsky. Set up by Ramashish, who has a rich history in marketing, leading global brands for India, and an incredible partnership with the Uttarakhand government, which has already taken one iteration and now we're going to start the second one, Nakshatra Sabha. Let's get to know Ramashish, Starscapes, and Nakshatra Sabha.
Thank you so much. And it is really a pleasure and a privilege to be associated together. I have been watching your career where you are growing constantly. You are biking, you are flying, and the passion which you bring to the table is something I think got us into Starscapes. So it's like a partnership made in heaven, if I can say that. And it is really awesome to be in a conversation with you today. I really look forward.
I think the thread that really binds us together is our commitment to getting people to reconnect with nature. I'd love to hear your thoughts as to why Starscapes happened.
Yeah. No, that's a really close to heart conversation. I actually it started all the way back when I was a small kid sleeping on the rooftop of Delhi. I don't know whether you recall. Maybe I have got too many years under my belt. So I do recall that we used to sleep on the roof under the stars, and we would water the roof and make it cold in the summer. And those were magical moments with my siblings. We would be counting shooting stars. There were not too many Elon Musk satellites, but there were man-made satellites. And there were wonderful constellations when we would make constellations of our own. Now, as I grew up, I realized, being an outdoorsy myself, that my daughter doesn't have that opportunity. And that's something which kind of gnawed me. And when I was in Singapore with a corporate, like you said, we were setting up a science center there. And then I realized that why not do something of this in scale? Because I bring the corporate experience. I could see that people are missing this. Now, what can I do individually to give back to society and get this wonderful memory and experiences which I had? Okay, children can't have it today in the city, but what can we do it in the outdoors nearby? And to that point, I'll belabor a little bit on the fact that people talk about, oh, it's in Machu Picchu, oh, you have to go to. Yes, there are wonderful places like Ladakh city, but you and I know that in our day-to-day schedule or from a big weekend, it's not possible to have a quick getaway to such fantastic places. They are great, but what we've done is, therefore, we have democratized it. We have taken places which are nearby, which are like 50 kilometers away, 100 kilometers away. Yes, I can't get you to what is called in light pollution, bottle sky, 0 or 1 like Spiti, but you are near 2 or 3. It's like the old days of Delhi. And for a person or a child who's on the screen and who's not seeing anything today, on the stars landscape, that's wonderful. And when we open it up through the telescope and we kind of give the guided tour and we show them the STEM activities, their eyes light up. And hopefully somewhere we bring that curiosity and the need for growth.
Really well captured, Ramashish. I feel screen time today is overtaking sky time, and I do have memories of sleeping on the rooftop, albeit not in Delhi. I was about I think from age 5 to age 7 when I stayed with my grandparents on our farm, where even back in in the 80s, there was unlike Delhi perhaps, which wasn't as significantly polluted as it is today in terms of light pollution and of course other pollution. I remember sleeping upstairs and of course wetting the floor with water to make sure that the May June was the hard heat in the north.
Yes,
right?
yes.
It was hot and dry, and you could put a bit of water and it would suddenly cool the place down. And as you rightly pointed out, I think I also miss for my son the opportunities that I've had as a kid growing up in a pre-screen ecosystem, and also as a person who, because of diverse interests like you, an outdoorsy person, I've taken up every opportunity that I have got in the last many years as a result of the ecosystem that I operate in. In the media world, there's always going to be somebody who
Yeah.
will call for something out of the box. And
Yeah.
most people will say no because typically it's inconvenient to go to those places.
Yes.
It's out of your comfort zones.
Yeah.
As a result of which, I've been lucky enough to do the Everest Base Camp trek. I've gone to places like Hanle to shoot like 10 years ago, before Hanle
Yes.
became a popular um, uh, destination for stargazers, and of course now a dark sky reserve. But we'll come back to dark sky reserve as a subject I want to talk about, because I feel we have the opportunity to talk about some concepts here in this conversation, which even if we're able to seed in the minds of people, it will make them more mindful of their actions.
Yeah.
And I think that's the goal of any conversation. Ardav, if you've ever felt it, because I'm sure you would have, as an outdoorsy person, I'm always happiest when I'm outdoors.
Yeah.
Outdoors, camping, hiking, trekking, or when I'm, even if I'm in Delhi or Bombay, but if I'm near greenery, in the buildings garden, in the society community park, there's greenery, there's trees. And the Japanese have a term for it. It's called Shinrin Yoku, which is bathing in the light that is filtered through the tree leaves.
Yes.
And it just makes me so happy. Like, it could be dreary, and it's not the same thing as looking out of a window and seeing the green trees. It's different because there's some chemicals that are being released, of course, in cities. Very bad chemicals are being released, which is why we have AQI of like 350, 400 in bad days. But there's something in the outdoors when you're in nature. And even if it's a small microcosm of nature, one tree, one champa tree that you're sitting under, one champa tree that you're sitting under, I feel there is something about it. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think there is also you picked on the right, thing on Japanese. In fact, besides tree hugging nowadays, there is a very interesting concept which came on the covers of Vogue, which is called star bathing. And I think star bathing. So
interesting.
So I think what happens is, when you are close to nature, one of the things which a large mountain, sea, in the city, we are so inward that we are big, right? It is like everything is revolving around you. And when you go and connect with the nature, or you connect with cosmos on a larger scale, you suddenly realize the time scale and where you are. And that kind of forces you to, or makes you rethink to live in the present. That, and to, in the larger scheme of things, the ego just vanishes. And that, I think, is somewhere inherent, and as I speak, sometimes I get goosebumps when I talk like that, because every time it is magical. It is not that, I've gone once, it doesn't impact you again. It impacts us every time. So I would really urge everybody, whether it is, going out to nature, and stargazing is one of the activities which we do. I mean, with that, the camping outdoors, which Nakshatra Sabha brings to the table. So we give those facilities so that you are in a comfort zone. We do it in the class and the quality which you need. And you are safe, you are taken care of, but you are exposed in a way where you get those feelings, those magical feelings. And that, I think, makes us, in COVID, that happened, right, to a lot of us. Why did people start going out? They realized the ephemeral life that it is. So I think outdoors overall, like you said, hiking, nature, and what Magucho is doing therefore, of bringing all of us together on a platform where more and more like-minded people could experience these things is the call of the day.
This is like a conversation I could have for 24 hours. And it's limitless, right? Because while technology has brought us close to each other, we're having a conversation today enabled by technology. But at the same time, it's made us very insular. It's me, my world, my schedule, my work, my priorities, my task list, my agenda. And when you're outdoors, you realize you're so irrelevant, so infinitely small in the bigger scheme of things. And also that you're here for a finite period of time. And there were things that will outlast you. They were there before you, they will be after you, but you have a finite life. So I think being cognizant of that, because I feel somewhere as you go a little older, children get different messages from nature, but as you grow older, as you close up on middle age, you realize that this is not going to last forever. that life is finite. So
Yeah.
for young people, it can be about getting out to the outdoors, feeling happy, feeling magical, getting the benefits that we spoke about. But I also think there's something to be said for people who are able to go to the outdoors and recognize that their time in life is also limited. And it can't just be wasted on just chasing
Meaning and
those 3-4 agendas in life, right? And which are unfortunately or fortunately technology dictated. There are studies that reveal that too much screen time in terms of the rays it's emitting, forget what it's doing to your concentration and making us all borderline ADHD, but there are studies that show that the electromagnetic fields that are being created around most things that are powered by electricity or by equivalence of electricity in terms of batteries is having perhaps an effect on us which we are not even able to comprehend. Maybe 20 years, 30, 40, 50 years later it'll come. Star bathing, Ramashish, can I do star bathing like anywhere, or do I have to get away to a place with less light pollution?
In Delhi, you see, suppose 3-4 objects on a clear sky, which is the most brightest, say the planet Jupiter may be seen sometimes. Venus is seen in the evening sky or morning sky off and on. You may see a star called Sirius, which is one of the most brightest. But if you see an image like when you go, say, this is called a Bottle 9 sky, which is worth. There's a scale called Bortle, Bortle. Okay.
Bottle.
So just to describe, people have made it easier. So, for example, Milky Way, forget it. You can't even see it with the naked eye here at all, right? But you just see 3-4 stars. Now, this is called a scale of 9. When you go outdoors from Delhi, say 200 kilometers off in the field, you come to a bottle, say 6 or something like that. Where we are going, like Jageshwar and all, it is bottles 3 and 4, about 4. Where Hanle is, that's like 0 and 1. So now the scale of number of stars goes up dramatically, and till you're talking millions, right? So you can't, like when we used to play, count the number of stars in Delhi, I can do that. And I can say, yeah, I've seen 6 or I've seen 10. Now try counting it under Hanle, right? You will be there whole night. You can't. It is the number of sands which are there on Earth in terms of number of stars which you should ideally be seeing in a bottle 0 sky, right? So now that's the kind of logic for it. And coming back to a little bit, I want to take up on that infinitely small thing. On the other hand, we are there for such a small speck of time. But the wonderful thing is, we are the only life we know. So imagine in that whole cosmos, so many stars, what all factors had to happen that I and you are today having a conversation. We are living beings in this whole cosmos. So that itself is also, I think, a wonderful feeling. Now, coming back to star bathing, so once you are in this, I think the whole aspect is, you adjust your eyes. The moment you put a light, like screen time, you have been very passionate about. What it does to your eyes is your pupils change, right, immediately to adjust to high light. And try to do this experiment ever. I would urge any of the viewers that you close your eyes for a good minute or so in say outskirts of Delhi, and then you open and see, and then you open your phone and see, and then count the number of stars. You suddenly see they have vanished. That's how our eyes react. So light pollution, even from the phone, or when people go stargazing with us, we tell them there are ways to manage it, by the way. Internationally, there are associations which manage it. There are places which are even near cities which have been designated as dark sky spots, because people have used downlighters, they have used less amount of light. So it's not that we can live without light in the modern world. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, do you necessarily need a very high wattage white LED bulb pointing upward? Sometimes in the sky, you will see in an establishment, it is going out in the world. Nobody is able to use it. So I think if we get smart to it, and India doesn't have extra power. We are a country which is growing, which needs a lot of power. So why waste light? It is power. So if it's one of those situations where conservation is a win to win. It is not like, human life versus animal life. It is not at all like that. Light pollution, by the way, really is bad for even the life around us, because I heard your recent listing on wildlife SOS, etc. We are passionate about outdoors as well as nature, right? Now imagine there is a 12-hour day and there is a 12-hour night. There are insects, there are rats, there are mice, there are owls. There is a whole ecosystem. Fireflies.
Nocturnal creatures.
Yeah, they can't. We know there are scientific studies which say that birds lose their way when suddenly there are bright lights, because they are used to a certain magnetic way or the moon showing them the way. And when there are bright lights, they sometimes end up somewhere else and die. So that's something I think we can't change everything in one go. But at Starscapes, being passionate about it, every place we choose, we try to inculcate this thought. We try to get followers who kind of understand this, appreciate it. Besides this, we are working with the government. We made a policy paper with Uttarakhand government to see now how at district levels we can have communities benefiting from stargazing and astronomy, and therefore protecting the night.
Rightly.
The government, we made a policy paper with Uttarakhand government to see now how at district levels we can have communities benefiting from stargazing and astronomy, and therefore protecting the night.
Rightly. Yeah. So, a very important topic that has completely gone into the background these days is astronomy and astronavigation. For hundreds and thousands of years, human beings have survived because of their knowledge of the stars, their knowledge of astronomy. They predicted weather, direction with stars. Today, I think I have to admit my own ignorance. I won't be able to find the Great Dipper after having known, because I'm part of the pre-screen era. So as a kid, I could identify Great Dipper, Small Dipper, North Star, and Orion. These were like, I could look up and I would be like, there. Today I can't.
And usually Cassiopeia, which is the big M and W. Many people are.
वो इतनी knowledge नहीं है मेरी. I'm a lay person, but these four we were taught in school, and because we were able to look up into the sky those days. I mean, skies weren't as easy as they are today. I'm talking, late 80s, when I was first introduced to the idea of astronomy and the stars out there, constellations. What you read in the book was immediately relatable by looking up in the sky. Now it's an abstract knowledge piece. It's like learning Latin.
No, so this is something we actually do in our workshops and Nakshatra Sabha as well as observatory. I'll tell you why. I was very, and there is a personal story to it. We of course teach the kids about, how to, suppose you're lost, how do you know which is north, which is east, which is west, which is south? And the first thing people will say, oh, there is Google.
Exactly. And what happens when there is no Google?
No, but they can't understand that. So I twisted it, and what I tell them is, I was actually at my observatory and a kid said this, and my star guide didn't have an answer, because he said, Uncle, I don't need it. It's on Google. And that kid doesn't have a concept that there is no Google. So I said that, listen, tell me something. Do you love coding? Do you appreciate that? And kids nowadays are very this thing about coding, and I said, do you know Elon Musk? He said, yes, I know Elon Musk.
How old was the kid?
This kid was about 8 years old.
Okay, 8.
Yeah. So I said, Elon Musk. He said, yeah. And this is an astrophile. The kid is obviously interested in astronomy, right? He's come to the observatory, dragging his parents. So then I said, okay, listen, tell me something. Elon Musk is doing what? By the age you are 50, 60, will be in Mars? He said, yes, uncle. I also want to go there. I would love to be, in Moon or Mars or something. So I said, then listen, tell me something. Do you think Google is there on Moon? Then he thought. And I was like, listen, somebody wrote the code of Google. And how did that happen? That happened because somebody knew how the map is. Google is just showing you what. So then he was like, yes. I said, do you have satellites around Moon which is now giving you GPS? I said, no, maybe tomorrow. So would you like to be the person who will build that GPS? That excited the kid. He said, yeah, I want to learn. I said, then you need to learn the way navigation was used to learn, and that knowledge of Earth is into Google today. So I think it is sometimes how you twist it, but what we do is, you're very right, things like, and not going back, I met once, you close to armed forces, World War I and II, when World War II specifically, when the flight, the bombers, how did they navigate?
Completely
they used to navigate. Yeah, so they used to use sextants and navigate using the stars. Can you imagine? And the bomber had a guide, right? The pilot had a bomber guide who would
I'm
be
a
doing those
navigator.
calculations.
It was a full-fledged position in
Yes.
aircraft up until 15 years ago with a navigator, because the pilot had to fly and the navigator had to use his charts, astro charts, and navigate.
Yes, yes, and one of the most toughest thing is that, because you are seeing there is no relevance, right? You are in 3D,
There's
you
no
can't
frame
see
of
the
reference.
ground. Yeah, there is no frame of reference, and you are just using the stars, and therefore, we can't go to that level. But we do share things like how a sextant is used, how a latitude finder is used, how do you see the pole star, how do you identify which is the pole star? It's not the brightest, but using Cassiopeia,
By pole star,
using
you mean North Star.
yes, the North Star. Because if you can identify it, then at least
Then
one
you know
direction
North.
is done.
But
If
Ramashish,
you
I've
know North,
forgotten.
you know the rest.
I've completely forgotten, because every day when one looked up and found it. But here's the interesting thing that I want all those who are watching to think about. It's not improbable that there is an outage one day.
Yes.
And we saw an MS outage recently. It crippled global banking and travel recently. It's not outside the realm of imagination to think that it could be. We've been watching these films where wars of the future will not necessarily be about bombs. You just cripple people and economies through actions like you hack access to these kind of things.
Yeah.
What will happen then? Imagine a plane that's flying today. A plane has the data inflow via a technology called ACARS. So we are communicating constantly with it's a satellite-based communication system, and there's like printouts and fax type things coming in and out. Imagine if that was crippled, and your communication vectors, which are your DMEs and your VORs, were all gone.
Not there.
How are you going to get? And you're middle of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Of course, one option is to keep going straight, and you'll eventually see something,
Land
right?
provided you have fuel.
What if
Provided you
there's
have
a
fuel.
storm? What if there's something that happens that disorients the aircraft? An aircraft on a long-haul flight flying transatlantic is not like being physically flown. It's an autopilot. But if there's an emergency and something goes wrong and there is an outage, then what? I'm sure pilots are still being taught basics of astronavigation for a fail-safe.
And not only astronomy, basic survival skills. Our kids are not taught that in school. You go to an OLE, but how many of them know which berry to eat, which plant to pick? Suppose you are in the jungle, and even if you are fruit-laden trees, our kids may not know how to survive because they don't know which one to pick. They may pick the wrong mushroom. So in Finland, when I was living, one of the things actually schools used to send our kids to in the autumn season was mushroom picking, and the kids could identify after that which mushroom is good mushroom, which is bad mushroom. And it's almost like a life skill. Besides that, survival skills of identification, navigation, telling time. So suppose in the day, if I ask someone you're lost north, east, west, south, you can actually use the sun by putting a stick, which is a very simple survival skill. That you put a stick, you see the shadow of the sea, you know that it's moving to east to west, and therefore you can calculate. So, in fact, one of the biggest things, we actually taught that in George Everest when we went in the last Nakshatra Sabha, because Everest, along with Sikdar, who was the Indian who assisted him, and they actually started, there is a nice book on it called The Great Arc. They did the whole India mapping in the days, and that's on foot, actually making contour maps, traveling through marshes, the contour maps of mountains, hills, and that is why he is such a celebrated one. But therefore, this is a whole field, right? Astronomy, that's why it's called mother of all, in some sense, as sciences. That somewhere there is navigation also. You can link it to earthbound things like sextant and all, which then goes into geography. But I think it will be a great to actually do a session and maybe have kids learning these survival skills.
Adults even, Ramashish. Once I could read contour maps. I can't read anymore. I've completely forgotten.
So if you remember, if you track 20 years back, we used to have to use, and we used to get them from Geological Survey of India. And British, old British maps. Yeah. So you could actually, if you know how to read them, you will know where the water body is, what height it is, what elevation is.
Correct.
And people
My
don't
father
know.
can read them. So when we go camping, there are some sites you're not going to find on regular maps.
Yes.
So he switches to contour,
Yeah.
and then he can figure out the elevation where there'll be a flat patch. At what height? Because that's a
So-
basic survival skill in the army. You've got to do map reading. It's called map reading is a paper you have to pass.
So in our country, maybe we don't have that, mandatory, army thing, but definitely there are certain very good practices, which, like survival skills, which could be taught. Right? So this actually started as a concept. So we've been working a lot in Uttarakhand. Our first observatory was in Uttarakhand because I lived there part of my time. I have a house there. So I built my first observatory there. So we had deep roots in Uttarakhand last 7-10 years in astronomy. And then we, in one of our camps and observatories, we had the local administration heads coming, and that kind of tickled their head. And then they said, oh, we today, for example, in a Kausani, you may not even heard of, a small
I know
hamlet.
Kasani, yes.
Yeah. So it's just 70,000 people. There are today 7 to 10,000 people who are coming only for astronomy because
That's
we have
amazing.
an observatory for 7-8 years. It's added to the local economy, hotels, traffic, transport. So government saw this and they realized that this is one thing. If propagated across Uttarakhand, it will be great because again it's a win-win. There is a lot of religious tourism, lot of pressure on certain parts of Uttarakhand, and there are great, forested areas, dark areas which are really not fully utilized. So the idea was how we could work together to bring these to remote areas across Uttarakhand. So not really the hotspots of, let's say, current tourism. And we curated it in a manner. So why we called it Nakshatra is very easy sounding Hindi name. Everybody relates to it. So it has a link. There are 20 plus of these nakshatras which are there in our culture, in our Vedic culture, in our
Right.
Hindu. Yeah. So what we did was we call it as if a constellation of stars has come together in this venture. Now, in these, what we do is we take a kind of a virgin territory outside a main area. We do camping, food, music, bonfire under the stars, and then along with all this, we have full day and night activities. So you actually see sunspots. We have special telescopes by which you can see the surface of the sun. So it's not just a golden disk, but you see the spots, you see the
What are
eddies.
sunspots?
So sunspots essentially happen when there is a magnetointerference in the sun, and therefore what happens is some of the material goes out, and that becomes a colder spot, and that kind of becomes darker. So when you will see a darker spot on the sun, and then over time, so there is a magnetointerference. One part goes out, it comes down, and there will be two spots side by side. You can see the surface of the sun with our telescope. You can see this happening. You can see the surface boiling in the sense of the temperatures. That is called a hydrogen alpha telescope. So we show all this to the kids. Then we have rocketry, space missions. So we talk of space missions. Kids build rocketry. They actually do it themselves. They shoot it with air. They have competitions. Who went farthest. Then they have fun playing space bingo games, identification. Build your own constellation. So think of it as a lit fest of Jaipur, but a astrofest. There are talks happening. There is conversations happening. There is special experts like this time we are having from IIA Indian Institute of Astrophysics. So there is something there, and then of course evening, which opens up to astronomy. Then we have photographers, astrophotographers who come and teach, and not only with DSLR. There's experts we got together who teach you smartphone astrophotography because a lot of kids are into smartphones. So what we try to do is 2 nights, 3 days, kind of all taken care of. There is medical support given by the government. These are usually safe zones. Because it's sponsored by the government, we also have your administration support, police support.
Right.
So we kind of build all that together into this kind of and it's like a product called Nakshatra Sabha now.
It's like a pop-up astro village.
Yes, you could call it.
Plus festival.
It's like a festival celebrating all this. And everything taken care of, and there will be 6 of these. So it's not one. We did one in George Everest. Now we are having in Jageshwar. Then we have Benital. There's a wonderful plateau, Bugyal as they are called there. in November. Then we'll have the Nainital. Then we'll further go to Pithoragarh. So it's like a festival for a year of astro.
If you're someone who's interested in the stars, and you should be, all of us should be interested in the stars, this is where you need to be. Head over to Magucho to find details of the Nakshatra Sabhas that are happening starting end October all year round with Starscapes. There is going to be food, music, culture, all of that in an Astro Fest. Check out the details on our platform and on Starscape, and make sure you plan your schedules accordingly. There's already been an incredible summer season with the Nakshatra Sabha, and it's kicking off again at the end of October. And as Ramashish says, it has happened before, it will happen again.
It actually started as a concept. So we've been working a lot in Uttarakhand. Our first observatory was in Uttarakhand because I lived there part of my time. I have a house there. So I built my first observatory there. So we had deep roots in Uttarakhand last 7-10 years in astronomy. And then we, in one of our camps and observatories, we had the local administration heads coming, and that kind of tickled their head. And then they said, oh, we today, for example, in a Kausani, you may not even heard of, a small hamlet.
Kausani, yes.
Yeah. So just 70,000 people. There are today 7 to 10,000 people who are coming only for astronomy because we have an observatory for 7-8 years. It's added to the local economy, hotels, traffic, transport. So government saw this and they realized that this is one thing. If propagated across Uttarakhand, it will be great because again it's a win-win. There is a lot of religious tourism, lot of pressure on certain parts of Uttarakhand, and there are great, forested areas, dark areas which are really not fully utilized. So the idea was how we could work together to bring these to remote areas across Uttarakhand. So not really the hotspots of, let's say, current tourism. And we curated it in a manner. So why we called it Nakshatra is very easy sounding Hindi name. Everybody relates to it. So it has a link. There are 20 plus of these nakshatras which are there in our culture, in our Vedic culture, in our Hindu. Yeah. So what we did was we call it as if a constellation of stars has come together in this venture. Now, in these, what we do is we take a kind of a virgin territory outside a main area. We do camping, food, music, bonfire under the stars, and then along with all this, we have full day and night activities. So you actually see sunspots. We have special telescopes by which you can see the surface of the sun. So it's not just the golden disk, but you see the spots, you see the...
What are sunspots?
So sunspots essentially happen when there is a magnetointerference in the sun. And therefore what happens is some of the material goes out and that becomes a colder spot. And that kind of becomes darker. So when you will see a darker spot on the sun. And then over time, so there is a magnetointerference, one part goes out, it comes down, and there will be two spots side by side. You can see the surface of the sun with our telescope. You can see this happening. You can see the surface boiling in the sense of the temperature. That is called a hydrogen alpha telescope. So we show all this to the kids. Then we have rocketry, space missions. So we talk of space missions. Kids build rocketry. They actually do it themselves. They shoot it with air. They have competitions. Who went farthest. Then they have fun playing space bingo games, identification. May build your own constellation. So think of it as a lit fest of Jaipur, but an astro fest. There are talks happening. There is conversations happening. There is special experts like this time we are having from IIA, Indian Institute of Astrophysics. So there is something there. And then of course evening, which opens up to astronomy. Then we have photographers, astrophotographers who come and teach, and not only with DSLR. There's experts we got together who teach you smartphone astrophotography because a lot of kids are into smartphones. So what we try to do is 2 nights, 3 days, kind of all taken care of. There is medical support given by the government. These are usually in safe zones. Because it's sponsored by the government, we also have administration support, police support.
Right.
So we kind of build all that together into this kind of and it's like a product called Nakshatra Sabha now.
it's like a pop-up astro village
Yes, you could call it
plus
that.
festival.
Festival. It's like a festival celebrating all this, and everything taken care of. And there will be 6 of these, so it's not one. We did
Right.
one in George Everest. Now we are having in Jageshwar. Then we have Benital. There's a wonderful plateau, Bugyal as they are called there in November. Then we'll have near Nainital. Then we'll further go to Pipavagadh. So it's like a festival for a year of that. So
If you're someone who's interested in the stars, and you should be, all of us should be interested in the stars, this is where you need to be. Head over to Makucho to find details of the Nakshatra Sabhas that are happening starting end October all year round with Starscapes. There is going to be food, music, culture, all of that in an Astro Fest. Check out the details on our platform and on Starscape, and make sure you plan your schedules accordingly. There's already been an incredible summer season with the
Yeah.
Nakshatra Sabha, and it's kicking off again at the end of October. And as Ramashish says, it has happened before, it will happen again.